Hello and welcome to another video. So in this video I want to talk about when to use AI, because in many of my past videos I've strongly advocated for you to not use AI and lean on it heavily when you are learning the fundamentals of programming. And I still stand by that today. I think that there is far more benefit to you going through those reps in the gym, the mental gym, and learning fundamentals by yourself without AI, because you will internalize those concepts and you'll be able to repeat them time and time again without the crutches of AI. Whereas if you lean on AI, yes, you'll get a solution, but then when you're faced with having to implement a new one, you will not know what to do because you will need to lean on AI again. And that's not what a strong developer will do. However, more and more companies that employ developers or employ people to write software are expecting those people to be able to leverage AI tools to make them more efficient, make them move faster, and produce high quality code. Therefore, there is definitely a place to learn how to use AI properly in your workflows. And there are different ways that you can do this. Now, I would recommend that you kind of hold off on doing this and using AI in your coding until you are quite comfortable with the foundations of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, as well as if you go into a language like Ruby and the framework Ruby on Rails. You should have a few applications under your belt before you even start to think about using AI in the coding flow. And this advice probably gets even more useful for someone who actually has 6 months, a year and a half of real world experience under their belt and they're looking for work. But if you are someone who is quite far along in your self-taught route and you've built some projects and you have a flagstone project that you've been working on and it's something that you're proud of, I would look at using AI in building out some of your features. And you may have already done this, but if you haven't, then I would recommend looking at something like Claude. Now, there is also ChatGPT, which is useful. Sorry, there's a plane flying over here. ChatGPT is useful because you get to copy paste code in there and ask it questions, but Claude is kind of the next level up from Anthropic, that is Anthropic Claude. So the way I use it at work is we have it in the console and it has access to all of the files in the application, so I can actually talk to it within the console, embedded in my IDE, and I can be looking at the code and I can be pasting file names, etc., prompting Claude, and it will get the whole context of what it needs straight from the application. So the solutions that it will provide will be much better because they have that context in mind. ChatGPT doesn't have this capability. So I'd recommend looking at Claude and having it integrated in your IDE through your Bash console. And that is a great way to develop. The way I like to use it is to learn about the domain knowledge. So in a big application where there's a lot going on, you can ask it questions. How does this thing work? How does this concept A relate to this concept B? And it will save you a ton of time by synthesizing that for you, so you don't have to go reading code. That really speeds you up there. The other way I use it is to proof of concept solutions. So when I'm building something, there's many ways that you can do it, but generally you want to follow the existing architectural design patterns in the application. And if it's something somewhat novel, then you need to explore solutions and the trade-offs of those solutions. Claude is also very good at that because it will give you some ideas, and they may not be great, but they give you something to work from. They remove that initial barrier and it speeds you up that way. And I also ask it I'll hypothesize and test my assumptions with it. And for example, say, hey, I don't need to safe navigate, which is a Ruby thing, on this record, or on this method, rather, because this record should always have this value, for example. And it's just good at saying, yes, that's the case, or no, because of this. And it's just really good for testing assumptions like this and making your code cleaner. So anyway, if you're someone who has some experience under your belt, or you're really far along in your self-taught journey, then definitely look at using Claude in this way. Because if you can demonstrate in an interview that you've done this and say, hey, yeah, actually I built this feature that uses the Google Maps API to show this all these pins on this map with this metadata, blah, 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 yeah, I used Claude to help me build this feature. These were the steps that I took. These were the solutions it proposed for me. I chose this solution because it's a good trade-off between maintainability and simplicity, blah, blah, blah. You're going to look even more impressive if you can do that. Oops, if you can do that. Try not to fall over here. And I think any interviewer will be very impressive if you can rationalize your coding using Claude, considering trade-offs, and also being able to demonstrate why you chose a solution that you did, and definitely explaining what kind of pitfalls you experience using Claude, because it will not be perfect. And that will go a really long way to showing that, oh, this is a developer who can use AI, who can move quicker. And if you could compare the time of developing that feature with Claude to times in the past where you didn't, i.e. it made you move quicker, even better, then you're going to look like a rock star. So that's when I would use AI in your journey to get your first job or second job, whatever it may be. As an aside, there was an interesting post from our CTO today saying that they're really pushing for everyone at the company to use AI, and that's not just developers, but they're noting that productivity, even though AI is being adopted because they've put out questionnaires, productivity isn't really going up significantly. And I think this is a really interesting misconception maybe with AI, thinking that it will push up productivity. But I think we're finding that in greenfield projects where it's net new code, it moves quickly, but in complex existing big applications with a lot of complexity, big domains, it's not moving as quickly. And if anything, some studies are showing that it actually slows developers down, which is really interesting. And I think that AI is very good at certain things, but does not replace the human. So that's some good news right now for people who are worried about AI replacing them. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Keep this short and sweet. Have a good one.